Hairdressers of Reddit, what is the most disturbing thing you've ever found on someone's head? I've only had 2 disturbing discoveries. Thank God. Both happened when I was in cosmetology school. The first wasn't too bad, just weird. This lady came in for a cut and when I put my fingers in her hair, I found tons of twigs and leaves inside. Her hair was fairly thick, and there were just tons of twigs tangled up in there. I made a comment about it and she just laughed. Really strange. The second time was disgusting. A different lady came in for a cut and I took her to the shampoo bowl and started shampooing. After a minute of that, I noticed a spot on her scalp that felt funny, so I parted the hair and she had this huge wound that was oozing pus and blood. I almost threw up on her head. I had to go get an instructor. I had just started working on real clients at this time and was quite shy to explain to her why I couldn't continue her service, and she literally looked at us and said, "Well, it's not even that bad. I don't understand why you can't just cut my hair anyway." She had to leave wet and I spent a good 30 minutes scrubbing my hands and nails afterwards. My aunt was a hairdresser and had a client who had these little soft spots in her head with scars above them. The client was a bit dotty, as my aunt affectionately put it, and very fixated on my aunt to make sure the scars were covered. The lady would get a perm each visit, so she spent quite a while there, and my aunt always assumed she might have early dementia or something, but adored her because she was very sweet and fun to talk to. It wasn't until the client's son was there during a visit that aunt found out her client had been lobotomized as a young housewife, and that was what the soft spots were from. I've been waiting for a lobotomy story. I feel so sorry for those people, mostly women, that got your brains stabbed out because you weren't compliant. I can't imagine. My friends were shaving each other's heads, early 80s punk rock, and one of them had a large pimple they popped and a BB came out. When they were kids they would have BB gun walls, so they figured one got lodged in his scalp during battle. My friend Jen is a hairdresser and saw that this regular of hers who was middle-aged guy had a mole start to change. It suddenly had a gross looking kind of bleeding growth on it. She didn't remember being there before and told him he should probably get it checked. She didn't see him for almost a year and then he came in bald. She found stage 3 melanoma that he probably wouldn't have thought about. He told her she saved his life since there was an underlying tumor that could have spread to his brain stem or cervical spine and paralyzed or killed him. This is so good and wholesome, making it actually one of the best in the whole thread. Emo. Your next client says her hair is really tangly and will need a lot of help combing it out. Might have to cut out some knots. White high school girl comes in with a single dread that covers her entire head. I crap you not. It was like a giant hat that was one dread helmet. Told her I'd have to shave her head and she freaked out and left. I was in a psych hospital a while ago and there was a guy with one flat dread, like a beaver tail. I honestly don't know how he even got it to form that way. He was trying to soak it in lotion and tea tree to loosen it up, but there's no way that was going to work. Ex-hairdresser. 2 bad ones. 1. We used to have a lady client who would sit in a room for about a month at a time and smoke at least 40 a day. Her hair was only ever washed by us, at the hairdressers. The only thing that was worse than the smell was the sticky tar that would be stuck in her hair. The water would be a deep brown and it would take about 4 washes. 2. An old chap who had scruffy hair came in for a wash and cut. As I begin to wash his hair, my hand slips into a large cave gap in his skull. 1/4 of his head was missing. At least a tennis ball sized gap. Turns out he had a bad motorcycle accident and had to have brain surgery. A lot was removed. Heads up would have been good. I've got a whopping scar on the back of my head that only hairdressers see, and they almost always ask about it. It's actually a scar on top of a scar. I smashed my head on the exact same spot I once had surgery, both incidents requiring stitches. One said that it looks like something that should have killed me. I have 2. First one was in hair school. We had a lot of destitute people come in because the cuts were like $4. This lady sat in my chair for a cut color. Her hair was impossibly ratted and it took me a good half an hour to finally remove the tangles. Once the brush strokes were fluid, I noticed a large bump on the back of her head. I moved her hair out of the way and it was a huge tumor that was red and the skin was cracking like crazy. Think cutting a softball in half sized. She told me she'd been in the hospital for weeks waiting to have it tested and removed, and that's why her hair was so ratted from laying in bed for so long. It took every bit of self-control I had to control the gagging and not be sick all over that place. Next one was this high school age girl who came in for foils. I mixed her color and got through maybe 3 foils when I noticed something moving on her scalp. I took a closer look and saw bugs all over her head. I had never seen lice in real life, so I called my friend, another hairstylist, over to confirm my suspicion. The client looked super nervous and said, "Are you about to tell me I have lice? I've been to 3 stylists this week and they all said that, but I haven't found any." I had to drop my tools, rush her to the shampoo bowl, rinse off the color and get her the frick out of the salon. I couldn't believe this girl. If you have been to 3 stylists this week and they all said the same thing, why the frick would you not believe them and come infect another salon? We had to disinfect the entire salon that day. Chairs, capes, towels, tools. I was so pee, but I did walk her down the street to her Sally's and get her the medication she needed. Hopefully she took it and didn't go trying another salon. Sheesh. I knew we'd get to the gross eventually. I cannot believe how nasty people are. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. In my opinion, washing your hair before getting it cut is like brushing your teeth before visiting the dentist. Just the richer. Grandmother was a hairdresser, and when I started driving she used to tell me the story of Priscilla Hudson to scare the crap out of me to respect the railroad tracks. Priscilla Hudson was an old woman who came into my grandma's shop. This was during the 60s and 70s, and she said this old woman had a scar that started on the middle of her cheek, went up through her eye and into the hairline. Upon fixing her hair, my grandma realized it went almost all the way to the back of her head. She had to ask what happened. Apparently she had gotten tired of waiting on the arm to lift up and didn't hear the train coming. IDK how, and went around it. Her car got hit by the train, but she survived and got that gnarly scar. A year later grandma gets a call from the family informing her Priscilla died and they wanted her to fix her hair for the funeral. She agreed, and when she came in to fix it she noticed she was stitched up in an identical manner on the other side of her face. Apparently she'd done it again and it killed her the second time. Till getting hit by a train makes a very particular type of head injury. When I was in school a really strange woman came in for a scalp treatment. She gave me a weird vibe, but I couldn't turn down clients. The first thing I noticed about her was the overwhelming stench of BO and possibly rotten food. The second thing was that she had 2 large Little Caesars pizzas in her purse. They were stacked vertically. First sign there was something weird about her. She sits down and I go to check her scalp. Thank God I had the foresight to put on gloves because this woman had a giant, oozing wound on her head. It was probably 3 inches wide and 5-6 inches long. It was oozing pus and other weird crap, and I swear to God I saw something moving in there. And the smell, that was partly where her stench was coming from, smelled like rotting flesh and curdled milk. I obviously freaked out and told her I couldn't perform a service on her. She asked why and I told her she had a giant gash on her head that needed to be looked at by a doctor ASAP. She then proceeded to argue with me for about 15 minutes, saying that she didn't have anything of the sort and her head felt fine. I finally kicked her out, but holy crap, that image burned in my mind forever now. I've been running my hands through my hair over my head constantly while reading this thread to reassure myself that I am not a disgusting human. My head itches now. It didn't before, so I'm hoping it's psychosomatic and not lice. Fortunately there's pretty much no way it's lice, but I'm still scared. This isn't as bad as some that I have read, but it remains with me to this day and is one of the reasons I didn't take up hairdressing after college. I was doing a full head of highlights. I had sectioned the client's hair and was working up from the nape of her neck, a few foils up, about level with the tops of her ears. I had the section of hair ready to be foiled. I placed the foil up against her scalp with my comb and flattened her hair against the foil ready to add the color. As I went to apply the color I noticed pus running down the foil from her scalp. It looked like I had loosened an ingrown hair or something because I was holding the hair quite taut to the foil. I started getting tunnel vision and went kinda lightheaded, but I wanted to stay professional so I powered through it. I just slapped the color on and folded the color pus monstrosity into the foil and tried to forget about it when it came round to washing the foils out. This one actually made me quit hairdressing and join the Navy. Guy comes in for a $7.95 cut and his hair was so greasy and he had scabs and sores and huge crusts all over his head but didn't want to pay the extra dollar for the shampoo. I shampooed him anyway with tea tree shampoo and it took everything in me to not puke on his head. Of course no tip either. Another time I was perming this girl's hair and got to the very last rod and saw one single louse on her scalp. I had washed and cut and sectioned her entire head and that was the only one on there. Since it was 1989 I don't remember how we handled it. One more for the road. Was cutting a guy's hair. When I got to the side, he wanted the sides level with where his ears met his head. So I make the cut and something fell off and then there was blood and I'm freaking out. It was this huge mole type thing and I cut the entire thing off. He thanked me and said now I don't have to go to a doctor to get it taken off. Shudders. The frick. Not a hairdresser but I'm fairly certain I was a horror story. I was severely neglected when I was younger. Mother on H. Dad an alcoholic etc. Anyway, I had terrible head lice. So bad that they were eating away at my ears and my hair became fused to my ears. I remember sitting there crying as I watched her reaction in the mirror. Never felt so ashamed in my life and I was only 9 or 10. To this day I can't have anything touching my ears. That is terrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Few things. Pillar cysts. Like regular cysts but a lot harder. Most of the time you can't see them until you are washing their hair and you feel a grape-sized hard lump on your head. It doesn't bother me once I know it's there, but it still freaks me out when I first feel it. Dry scalp. Dry scalp come from lack of moisture or skin conditions. Usually the former. Many people believe it's dandruff so they use Head and Shoulders shampoo, which, from what I've seen, makes it worse. So my comb always gets gunked up with their dry flakes and I always have to throw the comb away. Dandruff. The true waxy, yellow stuff. I find it on young kids who are too old to have their parents wash their hair, but too young to not know how to properly wash it. So the oil builds up and forms a wax. Real bad cases are actually fungi. It traps the hair in the wax and unless I do a full search before the haircut, I accidentally run my comb through, snag and pull on a piece, resulting in a quiet owie from the kid. I usually inform the parents and try to gently comb it out so I can proceed to the haircut. Then after I just tell them to go to their doctor to get a better diagnosis since I am not a medical professional and I can't tell if it is just from lack of washing or a fungus. I briefly worked as a stylist at a retirement home. One day I was doing this really old lady's hair. Like so old, she didn't communicate. She was totally non-responsive, and as I'm putting her rollers in I notice that her nose is completely covered in huge blackheads that are sticking out of her face a good 4 inch. Her nose looked like a porcupine, totally covered in these huge spiky blackheads. I felt so bad because the caretakers weren't helping her with it, but luckily that's the grossest thing I've seen. So far anyways. Companion caregivers aren't allowed to do much. Used to work as one. Regular washing won't get rid of some kinds of acne and we can't apply medication. If she couldn't comply with doctor's instructions a nurse would have to learn good luck getting an apt for that. Not me, but someone I knew had a client come in with thick, black greasy hair. As she went to shampoo his hair, she noticed the water turning black. Apparently he had dyed it black a few weeks ago, but wasn't aware he had to rinse it out. Not a hairdresser but a nurse. A fully able-bodied patient with a newborn baby refused to wash her vomit-soaked hair. Left the hospital 3 days later with vomit hair. I was working on braiding a section of a girl's hair for an updo. She was white, and it generally seemed clean and tangle-free. Then I came across a section of her hair that was completely matted to her scalp. I commented on it, and she says, "Oh yeah, that's beer. I forgot about it." I could not find words for my shock. My stepmother would dye her hair a new color every month. 1 month, her hair would be red, next blonde and so forth. After she got her hair dyed a platinum blonde, she wanted her hair permed as well. Her hair was so damaged from all the abuse. The hairdresser explained to her that her hair would fry since it is so brittle from all the dyes. My stepmother insisted. The hairdresser gave in. My stepmother comes home with a scarf on her head. Her hair was burnt so bad that it was only a couple inches long and frizzy. A chemical haircut. My mom does hair in a salon in a nursing home. One day a resident came in for a perm. My mom saw she had scabs on her scalp, but the nursing staff insisted that she was cleared by her physician to have the perm. So, my mom put the curlers in the old lady's hair. Once she was done with that, she began applying the chemicals to her hair. The woman began complaining that it was extremely itchy. My mom checked the scabs and was horrified by what she saw. Maggots crawling out of the scabs on the old woman's head. My mom freaked and called the nurses back in, who weren't shocked in the least. In fact, they encouraged my mom to finish the job. She did not finish the job. Maggots. I made it pretty far, but I'm tapping out now. Was doing hair out of my house for tips while still in school. Was trying to help bring in money for the family since I had kids but couldn't work since I was in school. Didn't charge, only accepted tips. Backstory: at the time I was an army wife. He's out now, so I tried to follow rules. Stayed booked constantly. BC army wives liked the deal. One chick came over and once I started doing her hair I immediately saw the lice crawling around. I told her and she said she knew, she just figured I could work around it. Lord help me. I asked her to leave and then I had to clean and sanitize everything in my house. I had a full-on salon too, in a room with the chair and sink, etc. I was so paranoid that my kids would get the lice after that. I couldn't believe she would knowingly go to the salon with lice in her hair. You run into waxy dandruff sometimes. It's thick, yellow and it gets stuck in your comb. I usually will throw the comb away, but I'm sure some people keep them to use again. Also, I don't want to sound insensitive or rude, but you can't get the smell of older person, 80 plus, hair off your hands, even if you wash vigorously with soap. Old people smell is a legit chemical in our bodies. One of my exes worked as an intern, chemical engineer, for a big soap company who was trying to figure out a way to neutralize the chemical that causes old people smell. Hairdresser here. We have one male client that comes in about every 2 months. It is immediately evident he does not scrub his head when he bathes because there's a 3 or 4 centimeters thick layer of funk on the center of his scalp that is gray in color. To add, he wants to make direct eye contact through the entire service, especially when you trim his mustache. That's a hard nope. I once found that my client had head lice when I was halfway through the service and had touched my own hair. I'm fairly young and inexperienced, so I'll probably come across worse, but for now, that's it. Not disturbing but funny. A lady came in for a perm. The first step is to shampoo the hair. I get her laid back in the sink, start rinsing, and half a joint falls from behind her ear. She sees the look on my face and jokes, "What? Did a bug fall out?" I say, "Well, you could call it a roach." She realizes what I mean and starts freaking out, thinking I'm going to get her in trouble. Super Mormon community in a state where marijuana means jail time. Here's disturbing. One of my pedicure clients had the bone surgically removed from the little toe on her right foot. Something about recurring bone spurs. It felt like a floppy little hot dog. You could bend it in any direction, including off to the side so it would touch the side of her foot. Grasping it to clip and file the nail was like trying to hold onto a water weenie. LOL at water weenie. That had to be so weird. Obligatory not a hairdresser. My barber was telling me how just last week a man with thick dreads came in to get them cut and have a fade done. She told me the amount of dead skin and food in the dreads was sickening. That doesn't even take the cake though. He apparently had a full-length hot Cheeto stuck in one of them. She asked if he wanted to throwing away and he said he was going to keep it and put it on a plaque on his shelf. The hot Cheeto one is too funny. I had a friend in college who had dreadlocks and one time he found a live millipede in it. 2 guys, very well built and clearly foreigners, came into the barber shop before me and asked for a complete shave. Let's say there was a very awkward silence when the swastikas tattooed to their heads started showing up. Well, thanks to them, I learned that my ancient barber was a Nazi and quickly changed shop. Not a hairdresser, but work the front desk. We had someone who would come in twice a year for a wash and blow dry. Her visits to us, around every 6 months, were the only time her hair got washed. Obligatory not a hairdresser. This is my favorite lice story. Although it's actually my only one, but whatever. I was in Tesco with my husband, just browsing the sandwiches as you do, when in rolls a lady in a wheelchair with her husband. I don't pay much attention until they roll right in front of me, so I can't see the sandwiches. The first thing I notice is the smell. It was pee mixed with BO to an astounding degree. So far so gross, but the worst is yet to come. I'm annoyed because now I can't see if the cheese looks better than the prawn, so I decide to bugger off and come back in a minute. Before I leave, I glance down at the woman. Her hair is moving, which is weird because she's rolled to a stop. I do a double take because I'm not sure what I'm seeing and concentrate a bit harder. Yep, her hair is moving. I managed to get a bit closer. God knows why. Her entire head is crawling. Literally crawling, with lice so big they're visible from about 4-5 feet away. Not only are they sliding up and down her hair, they are wandering around her shoulders and her arms too. How she isn't bothered I don't know, because it's making me itch just remembering it. I have never seen anything like it before or since. Put me right off my sandwich. Internal scream. People of Reddit, what's the most gruesome bloody car crash ever where a murderer viciously murdered? Finishes thread. Hairdressers of Reddit, what's the most disturbing head? Nopes out after a couple stories. Seriously, this thread will haunt my dreams. Ugh. Freaking sickers out there. Not a hairdresser, but since my hairdresser is like 70, I thought I'd leave this comment in his place. I have a non-cancerous tumor about the size of a golf ball on the crown of my skull that only he has been able to find, other than myself. He freaked out a bit when he saw it. I was 15 at the time. A little later, not a hairdresser, but I used to work with old people that had memory impairments. I was helping one lady take a shower, and when I went to wash her hair, I found an inch wide, 1/8 of an inch deep wound on the top of her head. She scratched it into existence herself, and it just got bigger over the next 2 weeks, despite medicating it and prompting from us not to scratch. Time for the cone of shame. My brother cut my dad's friend's son hair back in the 90s and found a full boiled sweet that had been flattened and melted into the child's scalp. It was disgusting and let us know the child was being neglected. Obligatory not a hairdresser, but one of my friends told me when him and his brothers got lice, they went to a Great Clips type place because their mom didn't know what to do. I guess they just waited for the barber hairdresser to find them and deal with it. Not the best parenting move, but also probably horrifying for the person trying to cut 3 boys' hair. EWW, I hope barber's policy in that situation is to send those people on their way and wish them luck, then burn down the shop. This is a thread that comes up on pet groomer forums regularly. Fish hooks, barbed wire, small toys, food items, injuries and skin conditions are very common responses. The worst I've ever seen was a groomer who discovered a dead newborn puppy tangled into the dog's coat. Not a hairdresser, but as a paramedic intern doing clinicals in the air. Basically, helping RNs and doing paramedic skills in a controlled setting. There was a 16-year-old kid that was taken to the ER by his mother. He was mentally handicapped along with a number of mental health issues. Whenever he became unruly at home, his mother could not calm him down and simply take him to the ER. He was a frequent flyer, and the nurses told me that normally, he would calm down after a couple of hours of being admitted and administered Ativan. He would eventually wake up and scream, "Haircut, haircut," become unruly. He would be hit with a benzo and he would be calm. Rinse, lather, repeat the process for a couple days. The nurses were getting confused, so we questioned the mother. She stated he just likes getting haircuts. While he was calm throughout his stay, we asked him, "Why do you need a haircut? Are you itchy? Do you hurt?" He never could really put into words what he was experiencing, so we eventually checked his head and parted his hair. His hair was a couple inches long, and we discovered there was an open infected wound on his head with tiny maggots in it. So the nurses gave me the task of shaving his head, and that's the story of the first time I became a hairdresser. Oh geez. Poor kid. It must be hard to have something so important to say and not be able to say it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.